I think taking these psychedelic experiences or these otherworldly experiences and these energetic experiences, and how do you find and place meaning in this world, this 3D human existence? You know, for me, going through the dark night of the soul really was, I struggled with that because like I was questioning everything for like probably at least a year. I was like, what does any of this mean? Like, if this world exists out here, then what the hell are we doing here?
Hello, you beautiful bluebirds, and welcome back to another episode of Deja Blu. My favorite podcast episodes are the ones that are with the guest in physical, in person. And this is actually a really rare, amazing opportunity because the man that I'm about to introduce you to does not actually live in Los Angeles, but yet he's visiting for a very small window. And during that very small window, he gets to come onto Deja Blu podcast and sit right next to me and talk about all of the things. So this man is not only a creative alchemist, and we'll dive into that in a moment, what that actually means. He is a host of a podcast called Onken Radio, which I've got to listen to multiple times, and it definitely makes my walks with Lily in the evening when I go around the block much more exciting. And he is a world-renowned photographer, shooting some of the most exclusive names on the planet and capturing them in their truest essence. And something about this man's photography is not that he just knows how to work a camera, but he can really, really bring the magic out of the individual and then capture it in the in-between moments. And this is just what makes your art stand out from the rest. And so he's a photographer, he's a podcast host, he's an artist. He makes amazing custom hats, which I am blessed enough to have one of them, and he's also a dear soul brother and just remarkable human being that has made an imprint in my experience when I first met you, because we went to ARKANA, which I did a whole podcast around. Yeah, the episode where the woman sucked the thing out of my neck. You're probably familiar with that. Oh yeah, remember that?
Yeah, remember that?
Casual Wednesday,
casual Thursdays,
Yeah,
Fridays.
it was one random day of the week. Totally.
I had a beetle sucked out of my neck.
Yeah. I mean, he experienced it too, so we're going to talk about that as well on this podcast, and we're going to go into that piece. But straight away, instantly, I just knew that this man was soul family and that we had lots of like creative endeavors to be contracted together. So it is so exciting to have Nick Onken on the podcast, please.
Damn, that was an intro. Holy shit. I like that.
I like the intros. Like it's like my favorite time to sort of blow smoke up of my guest's ass. Is a little bit.
Inspiring me to have to step up my game over here.
You asked me for a matcha before we came onto the podcast to give you a little bit of energy boost, and I was like, oh, but he's not had my intros yet. You just wait, brother. You don't need a matcha. I'll give you a Deja Blu intro.
I just got the Deja Blu matcha intro.
Yeah, exactly. Right in the veins. So welcome to Los Angeles.
Thank you. Got in yesterday, flew in like a bluebird, you know what I'm saying?
On the wings of love.
Right
into the Deja Blu studio, aka my dining room.
And Lily's licking my toes.
Exactly. So, brother, so happy to have you and to have you back. And ultimately, ultimately, this is like our actual opportunity to catch up here with everybody watching, because you kind of got in my house and within maybe 15 minutes we were already podcasting. So we haven't really had an opportunity to catch up with everything that has transpired since our time in Mexico. So first and foremost, I just want to ask you, like, how you doing? Like, what's good? I haven't seen you in the physical since we got blasted through the stratosphere, like in multiple occasions with indigenous wisdom keepers and elders of the medicine community. So what's good, broski?
You know, since the 63-year-old granny, you know, she be laying it down. Mm-hmm. You know, it's been an interesting time, very interesting time. I think we've both had another plant medicine journey in between. I just did my own mushroom journey last week at my house, and that was also interesting. But you know, I think the integration was, I don't know, like this whole world is just feeling like such an illusion right now, and I'm having these like interesting glitches in the matrix of like, I'm like, whoa, it's like I zoom out and zoom back in to my body. And, you know, just reading, I've been like, you know, thanks to you, I've been like looking at Sadhguru's stuff now a little bit more. and just like taking in different information in that sense of. I just interviewed Gary Zukov last week. Who
The interview that what?
Gary Zukov. He wrote the book The Seed of the Soul. And he's talking about, his whole new book is talking about going from 5-sensory human to a multi-sensory human to like universal human. And
what does a universal human do?
that's, I think, more like Christ. Because he was
okay.
like, I was like trying to understand what he was talking about. And he was like, yeah, it's like there's not really any universal humans on the earth right now.
So it's almost like, kind of like the Gene Keys, where it's got broken down to the shadow of the gift in the city. And the city is like super rare. And it's like kind of Christ consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. It's very Christ consciousness, very like you're playing in a whole different realm from what it sounds like. Multi-sensory are people like us, and he's like kind of talking about the emerging multi-sensory, emerging universal humans like us that are like tapping into this other world outside of our 5 senses, and thinking about how our whole experience of this 3D world is just in our heads, through our senses. And so I think just kind of contemplating that from my integration from the plant medicine, both journeys has just been a little bit of a trip, to be honest.
I mean, is that not really the nature of psychedelics in itself, a psychedelic trip?
Yes, but
the trip outside of
the trip outside of the psychedelic trip was the trip in and of itself, but it's like the integration, like walking to an airport, and I'm just like, whoa, like this just does not feel real. Like everything happening in the world just does not feel real. Everything feels like such an illusion. So I keep going, like bouncing back and forth between the 3 and the 5.
You're like sort of walking in the world, but not of the world, and observing the world from an objective perspective.
Yeah, and also like figuring out what to care about in this world when like that experience of the other world is so strong and so potent. So
I think you just pulled on a piece that reminds me of, like, I have moments where I sort of see what we call the matrix, or just us playing these roles and like, living to make money, to then pay our bills, to then live, and to live this constant cycle. And I just catch myself in moments where I'm like, why am I doing this? And it's just like a moment where it's like a glitch in the matrix, and I question everything, and I'm like, what is the point? Why do we do this? Like, when you zoom out and you're flying in on an airplane, and you can see all of these individual civilians, and they're all look like tiny ants when you're really high above, and we're all like stuck in traffic and on our cell phones and scrolling on Instagram and doing the things. And it's like, wait, hold on. Can we come back to the why of what it actually means to be human and reconnect to our intentions? And I think that sitting with psychedelics is such a blast out of the regular day-to-day experience, that this disjointedness of actually coming back into it and then finding purpose within this space can be deeply challenging for a lot of people. And there's not much emphasis put on integration. So I'm curious, like, when you say integration, what does integration mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, that is like I think I've been learning to understand what that even means, right? Because I went through a super, super dark night of the soul a few years back, and I did DMT, 5-MeO for the first time, and I thought I was integrated. I didn't even know what integration was, or what that meant to me. And it's like taken me probably from that time until now to even really start to try to understand what that means. And it's, I think, taking these experiences, these psychedelic experiences, or these otherworldly experiences, and these energetic experiences, and how do you find and place meaning in this world, right? This 3D human existence. For me, going through the dark night of the soul really was, I struggled with that, because like I was questioning everything for like probably at least a year. I was like, what does any of this mean? Like, if this world exists out here, then what the hell are we doing here? What is the meaning of all of this? We're just chasing the carrot. And so slowly, like, I nursed myself back through like breath work and meditation and things like that. And I started going on other, plant medicine journeys. And those kind of like the integration was a little bit easier to like come back and operate in this world. But still, it's like, how do you take the lessons that you've learned and apply them to interacting with other people. And I think, what's crazy is like we haven't been interacting with that many people over the last or I haven't over the last year because of the pandemic. So that adds a whole nother layer of integration, because you're just like interacting with people through screens. And so you're not getting, the lessons aren't being implemented quite as much.
Right, because the lessons are also can be found exponentially through the reflection of others, but also without plant medicines, when there's certain like shadow patterns that are playing out, we have no one to reflect them back off of, so we don't have to really face off with them. But that's when we're in like relationship, that's usually when the biggest triggers come up to the surface, because they're the ones that highlight it and bring it forward, and then in their presence we can either transmute it or project it, depending on where we're at within our awareness of self. But that's a really good point. So if you're blasting yourself up to the stratosphere, you're getting all of these codes and these downloads, and then you've got nobody to be in the reflection of to integrate these in a deeper way. I mean, it's like yesterday, I don't know if you know about this, but yesterday the governor or the mayor of California, just, the mask ban was lifted, and the mask thing was lifted, and the essentially California opened up again. And I'm just like, how do I socialize? Like, go into social settings and just yelling, I'm like, "Hi, I'm Blue," and they're like, "Oh, like I haven't socialized for a year." Like, don't be awkward, don't be awkward, don't be awkward. Hi. And it's like.
Did you say tapioca?
Tapioca? No.
Okay. I was like, what?
But that would be something that I would say, like, "Hi, I'm Blue, tapioca." I'm like,
you didn't put it past me, what
I mean? Like, that's a little awkward. And then there's like his crickets, and it's like because like, how do you go from blasting to the stratosphere? And like, specifically for you, we could talk about this, like the peyote ceremony that we sat in, and like after the ceremony you came back, but you didn't even really come back. You were like, and then to not be in interaction with people, like you live in an apartment in New York City on your own. And it's in the city in New York, and we were in the jungles of Mexico.
Oh my God.
With plant medicines. And so I'm so curious, because like what are the challenges for you to go to such expanded state of awareness, and then to go back into everyday life, and was there more pros and cons, or was there a lot of was it equal?
Honestly, it's been interesting, because just coming back from ARKANA really, really showed me that like I'm not resonating with New York anymore. And it's for me, like I don't live with anyone, so integrating at my house, in my apartment, was pretty. It was okay, because I can just lock myself in my apartment for a week straight and just like in my creative lab and go to town and like make shit all day long, and it's I'm totally used to that. And coming back from usually I play music all day in my apartment. It's like I'm jamming, I'm making stuff, I'm working. But when I came back from ARKANA, like I literally could not. I had to turn everything off. I could not listen to music. I just had to keep it quiet. And it was probably like that for a couple of weeks. But then what I didn't have the choice over was the Puerto Ricans bringing their bass mobiles and parking them outside my house and throwing a concert. And the sound, like it's just like shaking the buildings, right? And I was just like, total. That was like a definite jarring piece of the integration, and I was just like had to like breathe it in and I guess close the doors as much as I could and move through it. So that's been pretty jarring. And then just going out, I went out last week with some friends to just like to dinner, and then there was some like gathering and stuff like that. And I was just like, I think my time is up here. I've still got another year there for my lease, but like until I figure out where it is that I want to land. But it definitely is like a different energy. And I think the being out in nature, being out at ARKANA, where there was like, we had an hour of Wi-Fi barely for a day. It was a whole nother paradigm of not being tethered to all the things that we're normally being tethered to. So that's also different. So now I think I'm kind of starting to come back and integrate, and I can listen to music again, and which is nice, and because I love music.
I mean, but your time at ARKANA was the same time, and you had the same experience of Justina. performing the extraction on you. And,
Right.
if you watched the podcast episode I did with my time with shamans, I did a whole video and I posted the video of Justina sucking a couple of inches of a fishbone out of behind my ear, and like how wild. I mean, if you just watch that video, it's really mind bending and pretty crazy and wild and out there. I wasn't the only one that got to experience that. Nick also got to get on the healing mat, and I got to watch firsthand as Justina did her thing. And if you haven't seen the video, go check it out. And she sucked out of you
a beetle.
It was a living
a
beetle.
living, yeah, it was alive.
His legs were moving.
Yeah, in the video you can see his like little legs like.
Can you describe a little bit of your experience of that, of what was going on from your lens? Because I have my own personal experience of that and I've shared about it, but I'm super curious of like, what was going on in your experience? What was the feeling that was happening? Did it feel super real for you? Was this like a quick hand trick or like, what was your experience?
I mean, the hand trick thing always goes on the back of your head, but I think understanding energy and transmutation and like how all matter is a different form of frequency, right? It's a different form of energy. So having that understanding going into it makes sense. So for me, I didn't even know I had a chonta, is what they call it, which is stuck negative energy in the body. And she examines you, the shaman, Justina, beforehand to see if it's actually a chonta and she can work on you. So if it's like structural, like something in the bone, it's not a chonta, but if it's stuck negative energy, then she can. So like 5 of us out of 10 had one. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. And like I'd seen like they'd showed us videos of this happening. I'm like, okay, well, that's one step. I can get behind this. And and so when we did it, it was like I had mine on the first night after a ceremony, and I was like, all right, let's do this. I lay down on the mat and she just slurps away on my neck, like right kind of on the left side here. And I've had some, it doesn't really show up that often, except if I drive long distances, I get this pinch in my neck. And so I was like, all right. And then she's like slurping away, like
she's latched on at this
point. Yeah, like literally latched on, slurping. And then you could feel the energy come, or you could feel it pinch the skin and come through the skin. And then it just like, and then she's like, spits it out, and she's like purging the energy and purging into the bucket and stuff like that. That was the crazy thing. I didn't expect to feel it come through my skin. Yeah. That was so bizarre. Yeah. So bizarre.
I felt the same thing. It was like, for me, because the fishbone was really sharp.
Yeah.
It was like a needle almost. I was like, like it really hurt when it was coming through the skin.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine hurt as well. Probably not as bad necessarily. I don't know. Maybe. Well, who knows? Who knows? But it was definitely bizarre, but definitely really cool. Like really, I mean, it's a great story.
It's definitely top 10 of the stories.
Oh yeah.
If not top 3. So I'm curious, how's your neck doing now?
I mean, it seems to be fine.
You had a pinch in it or any issues with your neck?
Not in that spot. I haven't felt it since.
How often were you feeling the pain in it beforehand?
It would really show up if I was like driving long distances or like sitting in a weird space for long periods of time, that kind of thing.
But you've been traveling like a good amount and you've not had.
Yeah, I haven't felt it since then. So we'll see. I mean, I'm kind of the belief now that you hold everything in possibility, but nothing in absolute truth. Because how do we actually know? The only absolute truth is what we feel inside, and
which
what we know.
Which ultimately makes everybody's truths completely different, because what everybody's feeling on the inside is completely different.
Exactly. And we're all curating our own reality moment to moment to moment to moment based off of information that's coming in. And so what does that even mean? Right? Like we're living in an uncertain space, and all the stuff, all the narratives that are happening now, it's like, how do you believe any side of them fully 100%? Can't really. It's, and that in and of itself, I've been like thinking about too, and as part of integration, because it's just, that's where I'm getting glitches in the matrix, is we're living in our own little realities. Whatever reality we want to create, we get to.
And that's a deeper level of responsibility. It's a responsibility first and foremost. taking responsibility for every single thing that we have in our lives, recognizing at some degree we have created it ourselves. And simultaneously, when we can take responsibility of every single thing in our lives, then we have the power to shift things that don't feel in alignment and don't feel super jazzed up. And when I'm traveling, I recognize that, birds of a feather flock together. There's that old term saying, which is, you see people at the airport and there's groups of people that will travel or partners and you can tell that two people are in partnership. They kind of dress similar, they've got similar luggage.
Yeah.
They're probably wearing similar jewelry. And we start to mold and morph to the people we're around. So we create these little microcosms of these stories of what we want to create of okay, I believe magic is real and fairies are real. Beautiful. And I have a partner that believes magic is real and fairies are real. And we live in this beautiful little ecosystem that confirms that to be true because we reflect back to it and we attract people with similar belief systems and thoughts and ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so funny how as humans, we kind of come into these little flocks together and you can tell when you and 11 are together, y'all are from the same cloth.
Yeah.
you're just very similar in your expression and the way that you live life as a canvas. And, and you and I have become friends and now you've got it. You're epic intergalactic codes of tattoos on your right arm and we bounce inspiration off of each other, but ultimately within these little ecosystems, we create our belief systems within that space.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, being around you is such a fun experience because you are the embodiment of life as art and blurring the line between the two pieces. And that's a whole sort of theme in itself. But I want to sort of close out the conversation around the integration piece because you're saying that you got back from Mexico and you're like, all right, I don't want to live in New York anymore. I like being in nature. I'm getting more refined. Do you feel like the insights that came through you in the plant medicine ceremonies in Mexico have been integrated into your way of life so that they've become how you shift and see life?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, the first lesson I got on the peyote ceremony was just this space where I couldn't formulate language, which is really bizarre. I blasted through the portal on the first night. I was like, boo, all right, bye. And I got to this point where I was having this crazy psychedelic journey with my eyes closed, beautiful, really cool, fractals and visuals. And I couldn't formulate words, I couldn't formulate thoughts. And then I got to a point where I could open my eyes and I still couldn't formulate thoughts or words. I couldn't label the sky or the moon or the trees. And it, I was like, what is this? I'm going to come back from the, I'll come back, while I couldn't formulate words, right? There was hints of it there. But what that showed me was how much we create story to everything and how much, how often can we just stop and witness what is versus creating and crafting complete stories and narratives around something that you don't even know for sure. Mm-hmm. So that was one lesson. And then, which I've been thinking about a lot as I've been integrating is to witness and just observe more versus creating story. And then the last night of ayahuasca, we just blasted through another portal. And I think for me, it's been a different integration or just it was about ascending above my body and up into the fabric of the matrix, or not in the matrix, above the matrix, and airbending energy and downloading codes from the universe and whatever that even means, but I still have vivid imprints of what I was seeing in that experience. And, how can I was like, okay, how can I download these codes into my body so that when I'm not on the medicine, they're activating. Mm-hmm. And some of that was just Christ consciousness codes and creativity codes. I remember I was just like, oh, I'm going to put some creativity codes into this, divine creativity codes into my arms and my hands, because I use my hands a lot to create. So I'm definitely kind of, that's coming to life and to the forefront because I still have that imprint, right? I still have that imprint in my mind in day-to-day reality-ish. Is this reality?
It's reality, right? And we come back full circle.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I think it's definitely been, there's still been a lot to think about for sure.
100%. And something that's really dropped into me recently, since I did, and I'm going to do a whole sort of podcast on this separately, but since I did my Sadhguru initiation and training, I didn't realize, like, because I've been, sitting with plant medicines a good amount, and have received profound activations and deeper level of sense of awareness of self, and peeling back the layers of all of the veneers of a belief system outside of my own, not like actual compass. And it's been extremely beneficial in ways of like really coming home into myself. And simultaneously, people put emphasis on integration, but I don't think really we receive it from the severity of it and the importance of it. And I didn't realize until I was sitting at Sadhguru retreat, and we did like 14, 15-hour days of meditation, and meditation being like learning different mudras or different breath work or different holds or practices. And it took them 4.5 days of 14-hour long days of teaching us a very specific practice, which is the ultimate tool for integration based off of mudras, mantras, our breath, and specific meditation techniques. And I didn't realize that I hadn't integrated, like properly, fully integrated.
Yeah.
At least the past 10 ceremonies. And wondering why I got to this retreat feeling like so much noise and in my head. And I just realized a much deeper level of the necessity of integration in my being. And so I made a commitment, and I've actually started like what seems to be a little global movement, which is happening right now,
I love it.
which is 40 days of devotion. And what I'm being asked of now, my intuition is guiding me like no more plant medicines for a good amount of time.
Oh.
Yeah, it's time to integrate. And it's time to actually recognize that, we can get blasted out to the ethers, and you can receive Christ consciousness codes and see the potential of the human experience and dive and swim through the waters of the Akashic ocean and see what it means to actually be a being that is not confined by the five sensory experience. And simultaneously, if I am not finding the pure bliss and the ecstasy in the most mundane, I'm missing the point of the human experience.
Yeah.
And what constant experience with plant medicines can do is get us addicted to the oversensory experience and then override the mundane. So we're constantly in this seeking place of like, I'll scroll on Instagram, or I'll eat some more food, or I'm going to watch this YouTube video, or I'm going to do, because I want to be overstimulated. I can't sit alone with my breath. And there was an experiment that was done that was like people were placed in this room, and they were given this like, you either sit on your own for 25 minutes in complete silence, and there's like this little shock machine that can shock you, and you have the choice to be either sitting alone and just being with your breath, and everything else is taken away, or you can play with this little shock machine. And majority of people would rather shock themselves than actually be alone. And this shock was kind of painful, but then to be alone with their breath and to be in a meditative state. And it was just showing how we've become so overstimulated by our five senses that we would rather we shock ourselves, electrocute ourselves, than we would actually just be alone with our breath. And those results for me were like, there's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful path of plant medicines, and I appreciate them as my teachers, one of my greatest teachers in my life, and like so grateful. And simultaneously, there's a shadow side that not many people are talking about. Why is this person sitting in ceremony for 20 years straight and still not happy outside of the plant ceremonies? Still going through relationship issues, still not finding internal peace, still have insomnia, still have anxiety, and yet sitting with ayahuasca every weekend.
Yeah. And how does that happen?
The lack of integration and the lack of recognizing. And what Sadhguru said, which I thought was extremely powerful, was he said, I'm not here trying to teach you how to be superhuman. I'm here showing you that to be human is super. And I just really resonate with that. Like, it's the in-between moments. It's the hummingbird that floats down into your field of view and starts suckling from the nectar of a flower, and for a moment just hovers and then disappears, that can give you that spark of excitement. But if we can find the joy in the mundane, and we're not constantly chasing the next high and the next distraction, the next overstimulated experience, then we can find the joy in everything.
Yeah.
And that's what it means to truly be the medicine. So when I share that experience with you, how does that land for you in your integration process? And do you feel like you have a solid practice of integrating these blasting through the portals and going into different timelines and bringing back downloads of Christ consciousness?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like it does resonate, and as you say this, I'm like, yeah, I meditate every day, right? Like that's the first thing I do when I wake up, and so I am getting a lot better at sitting in a room for 25, 30 minutes, an hour without.
Would you shock yourself, or would you just sit there?
No, I just sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, before, no, but like I think my integration, I garnered a lot of tools going through that dark night of the soul because I had to nurse myself back, and it took a year. And I was in this after I did that DMT trip. I was like, whoa. And every night I was just like, every day I was like, what is the point of this? What are we doing? And I was just going through the motions of life, and and then I was still meditating, but like it wasn't until I found breath work that it was like the first piece of integration for me, and that was like the bridge, right? Like I could activate similar states, but just with my breath. And it was detaching me from the default mode network in my brain, and like helping me to drop in and find gratitude and slowly but surely I started to kind of like rise back up to becoming human again. And
I think a lot of people can relate to that phase. Like a lot of people that have gone through identity crises or everything in their world crumbling through the coronavirus 2020, the recalibration of what it means to be human and looking at our lives from a completely different perspective can be quite scary and earth-shattering. So I think this piece is very relatable to quite a few people that have gone through the dark night of the soul recently.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have your tools. You have to find the tools and seek the tools, to help you make the mundane back to some sort of like normalcy, right? And then it's just about creating a 0 point every day. And like for me, that's been meditation. It's been like a transcendental mantra-based meditation, and then like gratitude practice, and just a little bit of prayer as well. And like that, it's and intention, right? Like in the intention of transmuting any sort of like darker feelings, or because a lot of times I wake up in a darker space. So, and I think the meditation, I've seen it now, it completely shifts my state every day to at least ground zero. And I think getting to a ground zero, so you're moving through the day, you can set a positive intention and move through the day from a ground zero state of being, or even a higher state of being. And it doesn't have to be like just ground zero. It can be like an elevated emotion of, that's why I practice the gratitude, because that's like gratitude is the easiest state changer, emotional frequency state changer, because we all have something to be grateful for, even if it's our breath. I mean, that is the biggest thing to be grateful for, is that we're alive, right? But thinking in gratitude it shifts our emotional state of being. And so I think starting the day out with that and crafting intentions from that has been huge for me in integrating just every day.
Ultimately, it feels like gratitude is the frequency of abundance.
Yeah.
It's a vibrational match of saying, wow, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for this. Because our thoughts can only be in ultimately one place at a time. Multitasking is actually, I don't even know if multitasking is actually a real thing. You can only do one thing at a time. You can just do many things in a very short period of time, but you can't actually think two thoughts at the same time.
No.
So multitasking isn't actually real. So it's just a very short attention span, ultimately. It's like from this and then to this and then to this. But if our conscious awareness is being sent towards like first thing in the morning, and this is part of the 40 Days of Devotion challenge, is to say, okay, thank you so much for this. That's the only thing that can exist. And then the thoughts and energy starts flowing into that area of our lives. And then it starts essentially every time I see it like a garden. Like it's many different plants in the garden. There's different herbs and all these different things. And I go into the garden and I'm like, thank you for this herb. And I put water on it. And then thank you for this. I put water on it. And I go and water each individual thing with my attention and intention and my gratitude, which creates really fertile soil for it actually to start bearing fruit. However, the thing is it the integration piece is not like, all right, I got back from blasting my consciousness through the stratosphere with this plant medicine. And now I'm back home. And for one morning, I said thank you to a bunch of different things, and then I didn't revisit it at all. Consistency is key. And then you said there was that piece, like I meditate every morning. Now this is going to be the thing that's going to really help you come back into this reality, is bringing your awareness, first thing you do, into yourself before you start allowing the world to demand your attention.
Yeah, and not looking at your phone until after that's done.
That's part of the 40-day challenge too, is airplane mode until after you complete with your devotional practice. And something that really helps me and holds me accountable is to have my phone on airplane mode, but I do a time lapse. And the time lapse, what it does is once it's playing,
you can't touch it.
I can't touch it. I'm gonna fuck up my time lapse. So like I ain't gonna touch it. And it really actually holds me accountable, because I know that part of myself that goes, yeah, but I think there's a message there. You should probably just check it. Like that, I'm speaking directly into that piece and setting myself up for a win to not touch my cell phone during the practice
That's a great idea.
If you were to give 3 top integration tips, and we'll say meditation is one of them that you do every single day, what would be other 2 integration tools for somebody that I would class you as a psychonaut?
Yeah, I would. Yes.
Yes. I am a psychonaut through and through. Okay, so for a psychonaut, 2 other integration tools.
Movement, absolutely. So for me, after I meditate, I work out at HIIT workouts, but I do 5 minutes at least of yoga, stretching, just getting into my body, and then I work out. So that's been hugely, not for like the physical health, but also just like getting into the body and getting moving and stretching and yeah. I just had another glitch in the matrix. That was so weird.
This is why we don't do plant medicine, kids. I'm just kidding.
And then the third thing would be like breath work for sure. I'll do the I forget what you call it, the balancing.
Alternate nostril breathing.
Yeah, I'll do that kind of also.
There's an actual like proper name for it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I forgot what the name was. But alternating breaths or not. Inhales and exhales through the nostrils to balance the feminine, masculine, left and right. And then I'll do like a Wim Hof style breath work as well. That's more of a drop in. That's the thing that nursed me back from the dark night. That was the biggest integration tool for me. And it was 6 rounds. So it's about 40 minutes or so. I created a
6 rounds of 40 minutes.
No. 6 rounds is about 40 minutes total. Right. Yeah, total.
I was like, damn.
That's a long breath hold.
3 hours of breath work every morning.
Oh, yeah, I didn't tell you I could hold my breath for 35 minutes?
Glitching.
So I created a whole breathwork soundtrack with my own guiding vocals on it. So it was for me. So I could like drop into a deeper meditative state with that. And I could do it every night. And there was a point coming through the dark night of the soul where I was doing it every day to integrate myself back. And that's super powerful. And there's different types of breath work, obviously, that you can integrate. There's Kundalini, and I think getting into the breath is huge. And there's another one is like I'm kind of working into and this might be a good segue, is just the integration of creating.
Right.
So for me, one of my intentions with doing plant medicines and these different things is to be able to connect to a higher source to transcend the art, to feel the art and to create from. So I'm still kind of learning about.
And you use the word alchemy a lot as a creative alchemist. In fact, actually, the sort of the label in which you go by. I'm curious, how do you find creativity supports you in a way of integration, like in a deeper way? Like if you were to go sort of expand on it a little bit more.
I think because it's tangible. The creativity of making things in this physical plane it does. It's like a tangible thing. If I'm making a hat, it's tangible. If I'm making even photographs are tangible. I'm using my hands and I'm taking a photograph, making a photograph, and then I'm building it out on the end, on the back end, and doing podcasts also tangible. Like, and then I'm learning how to DJ. I'm learning the DJ stuff just for fun because I think it's fun and it's giving me a whole different understanding of music, and it's a whole nother kind of skill set with the hands. So I think it is kind of that, from up here to like tangible.
So from non-tangible, non-physical to physical realm.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're one of the most creative individuals that I know, in the sense
you.
from just life is art. And I remember, because you make hats, and we talked about that briefly. But there was one hat that you made that had like a bronze pyramid coming out the top of it. Like it was like some sort of. It looked like the vehicle of ascension. Like you put this hat on, and it's like the sorting hat from Harry Potter, and it's going to blast you to another dimension. Like he's got videos of this on his Instagram, and I'm like, this dude, like there are no bounds to your creativity, and from the hats that you're making to the photography that you're taking, and the way that you capture people. And have you always been this creative? And have you needed to go through an initiation of a permission? Were you ever not this creative, and then something happened and you got super actively creative? Or like, has this just been your default?
I have always been pretty creative my whole life. My parents luckily like encouraged me to practice art because I loved it. And in high school I did AP art, so we had to like practice. We had to take one class in all the different disciplines, so painting, sculpture, drawing, commercial art, desktop publishing, all this stuff. So I think that was probably the start of it. But then I went into graphic design and did that for 5 years. And then I went into photography and did that solely for like 15 years. And then as my, part of my dark night of the soul was my photography business starting to crash. My commercial photography business, because that whole industry flipped upside down with Instagram and all that stuff. And so I started playing with other mediums. So I started painting murals. I started a whole hand-drawn type project. I did a 100-day project where I hand drew a quote every day. And but it was more about like the art and like the medium. Like I was trying different pens, different things like that. And then that turned into like painting murals. So I'd translate some of that to a larger scape. And part of that was going through personal development, doing personal development work as well. And so I was integrating that perspective into the art. And so it's all this full circle thing. Now the art, the pyramid hat, that's because I'm like now really into like biohacking and, frequencies and energy and whatever. So I'm kind of all the things that I'm learning about on a thought level, I'm working to integrate that into the art. So the pyramid hat, for instance, the pyramids are they're made of precious metals, and they have these healing properties. So you usually meditate with them. You know Andrew Seeley?
Of course.
Yeah. So he's the one where I found those things from. He was like, I'm
not surprised.
Exactly. Andrew Seeley, come on.
Yeah, totally.
He was always wearing one of these on his head, and I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't say I'd like rock that out in public, just the pyramid.
What, he would always wear one on his head?
No, sometimes I would see him wearing one randomly.
Really? But not on his head.
On his head, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you just put them on your head. That's the rigid. That's how you normally wear them.
And he would just wear, so classic.
Yeah. But I was like, okay, well, now that I'm making hats, how can I like take this technology that's like healing? It detoxifies the blood in your brain, and it helps you, like activates different creative properties in your brain and things like that. And how can I make it cool and artistic and integrate it into a hat? So I tried that. So part of my lens of how I see things is like, how can I take some of these really cool, maybe it's like a little new agey or a new little like super biohacky nerdy that doesn't have any aesthetic appeal to it, and give it some aesthetic appeal as part of the art. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about things now. And so everything in my life is art. The way I decorate my apartment, the way that I dress, and it's all coming from, the intention of like just expression and creating. I think this is something I was just talking to East Forest about this yesterday. We were talking about like the balance of ego and service. and the artist, right? Because so much of the art, it's like this snake eating its tail. And as an artist, you're always, you get so much external validation from the art that it feeds the ego. But then the more you like activate your art through service with the intention of service, is the more that it amplifies. And in the balance of things, because I lost myself, I lost my ego. I at a certain point with my photography career, my whole self-worth was built into my art. It was built into my photography. It was built into who I was shooting, what brands I was shooting, and all these different things. And I had no idea that that's what was happening at the time.
Which is ultimately most likely why it all crumbled, because it was like getting you back on track to actually find your empowerment within yourself, not within your actual craft itself.
Yeah, exactly. And art does that, right? Because like the glorification, we glorify artists in this culture. So it's like, that's the other side of things, is that you can fall, as with anything, you can easily fall back into the ego of it, and like getting your validation from the external, and not creating it from within, and creating authentic power from within. So it's interesting things that I've been mulling over and contemplating lately.
And ultimately, I feel like if it wasn't for our ego, we would never really share our craft with the world.
Right.
Like we wouldn't be open to like sharing it out there or getting out there. So there's a healthy level to it with the ego as well.
Yeah, because art changes the world, and it changes it changes us, and it inspires us, and it makes us better. So it totally is that kind of, if we don't share it, we're not benefiting the world by not sharing it. But if we are sharing it, and we're like getting the ego blasted up or pumped up from it, and we start living from that, which is what I was doing in my photography, it all came crumbling down when my business started crashing. And then I was like, who am I without this?
And that's when you went through the dark night of the soul.
Part of it, yeah. Part of it was a combination of that and a relationship.
Classic.
Yeah.
What better way to swallow it right into the dark night of the soul than the love of your life, leaving you with nothing but
I left,
your broken identity. Classic.
Yeah. There's nothing like a swift cosmic brick to the head.
Yeah. Shit. Yeah. I'm glad we can.
Okay. I'll listen. Listen.
Well, I'm glad we can giggle about it now that the dark side of the null has found its way and passed its way through.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you believe that because most people are not as colorful as you are. Most people don't put as much paint on their canvas as much as you do. Like genuinely, like, right, you go to an airport gate and you sit down and you look at everybody and there's people shoveling their Cheetos into their mouth, and everybody's on their iPhones, and like everyone's wearing kind of like regular, like grayish palette colors. And then like you see like a Nick Onken, and he's got like all these things, crystals and things stuck to his hat, and bright multicolored shirts with a massive kimono and big glasses, and like you really do stand out as a pattern interrupt. And I think that's also for me what I find to be very magnetic about others, is that when they're dare to be unique and dare to be different, for me that means like really exciting. And I think that crazy or weird is actually such a huge compliment to call somebody, because it means it's going slightly different, against the grain of what the general status quo is. And I'm curious, as somebody that has had this as your default when it's been encouraged by your parents, like big up to Nick's mom and dad for encouraging this at a young age, which is just really beautiful, because it's giving you the time to fine tune and strengthen your craft. I'm curious, how do you think that you see life fundamentally different than the majority?
Yeah, I think I'm a, rule breaker. That's the first thing, is that I think there's always been something inside of me that's just like, I just can't get behind what's been crafted to us. Now I'm much more aware of that, but like it was like more of an unconscious thing throughout a lot of my years. And maybe there's always been this piece that I just like love doing things differently. And like perhaps part of it could have stemmed from like wanting to be noticed, kind of at an earlier age.
You're Leo, right?
What's that?
Yeah.
Leo.
You are a Leo.
Leo, yeah. So maybe that's also part of it too. Hey.
It was hey, look at me. Hey, mama, look at what I'm doing. I'm a Leo. I'm an illuminated leader and a courageous creator. That's what it is. The breakdown of a Leo is that if you're a Leo and you're listening, you're watching this, you are a illuminated leader and a courageous creator. And by God, you do love the spotlight.
Absolutely. So step into it, people.
Anyway, continue.
So it's been the battle of intention, right? I think the intention of self-expression and sharing who you are with the world versus like, oh, I need a compliment on my outfit to feel good about myself. I think for me, it's always been this, I just want to be different. And I know that when I have gotten when I've worn stuff out, say for the intention of getting compliments, I never get a compliment. And I would if I was wearing it out with the intention of like, oh, I want to get a compliment on how I look. It would never happen, right? And how ironic is that? That's always the way it is. So yeah, it was just like, I think for me, and I'm also kind of enjoying designing clothes and hats and things like that. So part of it is that artistic expression. Part of it is my art. And I think now I'm in a space in my life where it's like everything in my life is art. Yeah. So, and what I wear inspires me to make art. So there is this like cyclical, circle, which I used to ask people like, what does the phrase live inspiration mean to you on my podcast? And to me, it always meant like, if you're living inspiration, you're being inspiration, you're always like being inspired, right? So it's just like you're creating this cycle in your life of like being inspiring, like I inspire myself, in my own self-expression. And that just inspires me to be more creative in my output of actual craft on all senses, So now my whole brand is like a 360. It's like, and that's been a whole interesting thing to navigate, which I think is the creative alchemist side of things. Is like, I'm not just one type of medium anymore. Like I love all different types of mediums. And I think now that I have like a specific kind of vision or style, then that can be applied to different aspects. And that creates a personal brand essentially.
And that's what I sort of, we were joking about it before we actually started rolling with the podcast of like, what would we call it? Like a cosmic burrito or something. It's like you open up the fridge.
Oh yeah, the artistic burrito.
The artistic burrito. And we open up the fridge, right? And we've got like broccoli and we've got hummus and we've got peas and we've got all these different ingredients. And so essentially this would be like, for you, it would be photography and podcasting and making hats and designing clothes and painting phrases and pieces of paper that end up turning into big murals and like all these different pieces that you have going on. And then you place it in and you're like, what's your wrap? What's your burrito? What's your like tortilla? You know? And then like the creative alchemy is to brand all of it into one sort of deliciousness where it doesn't have to sacrifice anything, but it comes into the many different flavors, because a burrito would be so boring if it was just rice. Like,
exactly.
You want to have all of the different flavors, and ultimately I think that's the medicine that you bring to people, is that you don't have to just commit to one thing. There's something very powerful about a devotional practice of maturing your craft over time, but simultaneously allowing yourself to create a structure that supports you to be able to dabble in so many different things and have a creative burrito.
Oh, creative burrito.
Oh, does that give me a side of guacamole?
Yeah. Hey. I think Lily likes the burrito.
Lily loves burrito.
Yeah, and I will say something to that too. I will say that like focusing on photography for 15 years also aided that and allowed me to be able to create all of this as well. And
Lily's under the table licking Nick's knee. So that's what's happening right now.
Little shaman dog.
Usually she sits on my lap and then the guest reaches over and strokes her. But from the camera angle, all you can see is it looks like the guest, like multiple guests, looks like they're just groping my groin. And then they don't realize until after the podcast, they're like, wait, I was stroking Lily on your lap through the end of that podcast and I realized that they can't see Lily. So I just like down here like, well, thank you for tuning in today, Deja.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah. What is happening? This is a very weird podcast. Like everything was fine until the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, you were saying.
I just would say like, if you're new to art and you want to do a lot of different things, maybe it would be good to have a primary focus for a while and build that so that it like, photography has given me so many connections, and it's helped me build, and I love it, and I still do it. And I've been introduced to so many people. I've traveled the world, which has inspired my art.
You told me some stories and they're pretty dope.
Yeah.
I was like, tell me another story.
I've met some crazy people, and not crazy, but like had some crazy, just
like,
whatever.
Is this happening? Like, what is actually going on right now?
Am I here right now? How am I here right now? So that's been beautiful. And then now it's just translating into, the photography's created relationships for my hats. And so it's just kind of like this full circle thing. And then like now I'm doing with my podcast, I usually do a couple portraits of that person. And then, sometimes they end up being clients. It's all like this circular thing. And I think when you integrate art with life, your life is your canvas. You get to create whatever you want. If you want to go create, like say like I did a shoot for Aviator Nation. They flew me down to Tulum, and then I just stayed for a week and a half and like hung out and like created down there. And
the venues you were shooting at as well.
Yeah, amazing. Like we shot in the biggest suite of Azulik. Yeah. Like nobody ever gets to shoot at Azulik in general, really. Yeah. I mean, unless you're Sam and Chelsea, but like
Sam and Chelsea. Goals. Have you seen their stuff recently with going to Africa? That's a whole different story. We have some friends called Sam and Chelsea. Well, their name is Chelsea Kwai and Sam Calder on Instagram. And they are ridiculous when it comes to their content creation. Like every post, which is like happening like every day, they post something that's like insane, like hanging out of a hot air balloon and riding a bareback on a horse through the Botswana fields, and the giraffe is sharing their breakfast with them, and like the most epic. Oh, and a whole film down underwater in Tulum. Did you see that one?
Yeah, that was insane.
Come on.
And the photos are amazing. I mean, coming from another photographer, like all the shit that you see on Instagram, like there's very little shit like photography there's a lot of shit photography, but very little photography that actually like impresses me. And their stuff is so good. Both of them. Every time I'm just like,
what are you doing? How are you human? And thank you for expanding the capacity of what it means to be a creative on this planet.
Exactly.
Every time.
Exactly.
Anyways,
they're great.
A little curveball over there. So Sam and Chelsea, we love
you. Y'all are awesome. So art is life, people. Make your canvas. Make your life canvas. The relationships that you choose to create. That's a whole nother art form. Traveling the world, and I think the spirituality is the depth of it, right? That's what translates into the external. So I think part of the creative alchemy for me is coming from that space, because when I wasn't coming from it before, my whole self-worth, obviously, what I was talking about, was reliant on my art in the external world. So now my art is coming from a way deeper internal space. And makes it that much even more important and has a bigger message and service to the world. And way more sustainable over the longevity of time. Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like the roots got so much deeper into now. If the wind blows, then you're not like completely getting ripped out of the earth, but you can just sustain it. And because you're coming from the deepest place of what it means to be human, which is the core of your being. Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, brilliant. Brilliant. Oh gosh. So I'm like, another one quick thing I'm working on. So like, that's how I'm like, the hat brand is really so much about Exhibit A. Yes, right here. It's so much of, translating a lot of that into a physical piece, right? I want my hats are a portal to the universe inside of you. And, the first, you might just be an inkling. You see the white rabbit and you're like, oh. And then once you start following the white rabbit down the rabbit hole, the portals just get bigger and bigger. Yeah, you're coming out. And that's what the brand represents. Yeah, there's literally inside of the hat. I have one myself. It's just slightly too small, so we're gonna figure that thing out so I can actually start rocking it for the podcast. But in the inside of the hat, and these are all handmade. Like he's in his
studio / apartment in New York City. Like there's videos I've seen you of like torching the hats and then like and there's like flames out there and stuff, and it's a whole thing. And each individual piece is so much attention and care. Like you sage them and Palo Santo and you set prayers into them, and like right on the inside is your classic logo, and it's the Onken hat, and it's got like this white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland that's just like, oh, there it is. And it's got a white rabbit with a rainbow and a mushroom and a galaxy starry night. So if that ain't gonna tell you that this man is a psychonaut, I don't know what is.
Nice right.
But he's clearly, integrating all of your insights, your downloads, your codes, and you're integrating it predominantly through creativity, turning what once was just a download or an insight into a physical thing, utilizing your body and recognizing that you can create a bridge between the realms that are almost impossible to put into words into something beautiful. Yeah. And simultaneously, you're a beautiful physical representation of what it looks like to be in the alchemical process of the dark night of the soul and to turn it into something beautiful. And there's always medicine for everybody within that space, is because many of us can relate to the dark night of the soul. And also simultaneously, some of the most beautiful pieces of artwork come from those places. Yeah. So it's so beautiful that you are the embodiment of that. And the embodiment of life is art. You, like, if I was to, somebody said to me, can you give me like 4 examples of, or 2 examples of people that, are the fullest embodiment of life as art, you would definitely be one of them. But just because of the way that you be and the way that you weave in this world. So, Nick, if I was to, yes, Blue, if I was to,
pinkies up,
Nicholas, this is our representation of being extremely British. He asked me at the beginning of this, shall I do this whole podcast with the British accent? And I said, for the love of God, no.
No, please don't.
Please do not confuse the Bluebirds. Because it wasn't the best English accent, but we did decide that this is our representation of what it means to be proper British.
That's right, proper.
Yes, we are.
Hello.
I can say that because I'm English, and so I can take the piss out of myself. But
I do a really good Asian accent. So, I can take the piss out of myself,
Yeah, okay. We'll still let you stick to that one. Yeah. If this microphone was wired all the way to the same location as the presidential addresses are delivered to the planet, and you have 15 seconds to deliver a message to all of humanity, what would you say? Oh, no pressure.
Oh, wow. That was quite the question right there. I mean, just like
you got 15 seconds, don't fuck it up.
Oh man, my message would be to discover the universe inside of you, because that's where the answers are. They all are within, and when we create from within, we create a better world outside.
Mm-hmm. So there is your big old fat permission slip to be a psychonaut and to transverse the multiverse that is going on between your ears. Yes, that's right, folks. You have 73 trillion cells inside of your body, and they are all listening to your internal conversation of what you say to it. And if you start coming from an empowering place, all 73 trillion citizens go, yes, God! And they become this version of you that then emanates out into our vibratory reality, which only has to, by the law of cause and effect, respond to your internal state. So there was the big old permission slip from Nick Onken himself.
I mean, I think you just dropped the mic there with your pinky.
I've always wanted to drop the mic, but that actually was more so.
Can you do it with your pinky?
Chelsea, you can edit the audio with that because that's probably really loud. For anybody that's not actually watching the video, I'm so sorry. I think I just really hurt my pinky, but it was worth it. So, Nick, for anybody that's tuning into the podcast and they're like, yes, I love this dude, I really want to continue to follow his journeys. Do you have any offerings that are going on right now? Is there anything that you want to share of how the Bluebirds can find you and connect with you, whether it be through Instagram? What's your Instagram handle? What's your website? Like, how can I stalk this man?
Oh, man, so many things. Although Instagram is probably the direct hub now, the direct business card at Nick Onken, NickOnken. You'll find links to the hats. You'll find links to the photographs. I am working on an identity alchemy course, which will primarily be for personal brand, building your personal brand. But part of building your personal brand is deconstructing who you are and your belief systems and your narratives. So we'll dive into that as well. So all that. Amazing. The podcast is Onken Radio, at Onken Radio, onkenradio.com. And that's about it.
Amazing. There you go. There you have it, folks. This is how you find Nick Onken. And also maybe you'll just be at the airplane gate and you'll be looking around and you'll just see like a wizard looking man with a fancy looking hat with a huge kimono on and some big glasses and some long hair. And you'll be like, that is Nick Onken.
Yeah.
He really does stand out. And he is the pattern interrupt and the glitch in the matrix to give you a big fat permission slip for you to rock your shit.
Oh, mic drop again.
Don't. I actually hurt my pinky when I did that.
don't do
Look, I
that.
bruised it slightly.
Oh my goodness, you got like a little blood
I even
bruise there.
there's like a little bruise on my nail, and I committed.
You committed.
I really committed, but it
You
wasn't worth
committed.
it.
I was just saying, like, hold it with your, pinkies up, like your
I
teacup,
literally
like your
just
British
put all the
teacup
pressure
there.
on my
You're just like,
pinky.
fuck the teacup. I'm just gonna
Drop the mic with the pinky. All right. Well, anyways.
All right. Hey.
Little Winkin' Wallace over at the camera.
That's right.
All right, brother.
Breaking that fourth wall.
All right, brother. Well, it was so amazing to have you on Deja Blue and to actually like have a, an official catch up post our ARKANA experience. By the way, if you want to go to ARKANA Spiritual Center and you feel like you've got a lot of tools to integrate in your tool belt, then you can use code BLUE at checkout for your ARKANA experience to get money off your trip.
That's right.
That was a really like shameless plug. I'll put the code in the show notes. That's over to you, Chelsea, on that one. Thank you. She gave me the wink. That means that she's on it.
That's right.
Chelsea is also, if you're not familiar and you're new to the podcast and you don't know who Chelsea is the wizard behind the scenes. She was known as Operations Wizard. Then she got graduated to The Wizard. She also has a YouTube channel and she's one of the cutest humans on the planet. So in the show notes, it's going to be Chelsea's YouTube channel. Yes! Yes! Perfect. Amazing. Okay, well, Nick, thank you.
Thank you.
I always like to say one of the greatest gifts we could ever give anybody is our time and our attention. And you don't even live in LA and you're here in the physical.
In the physical, we are here.
With your new arm sleeve and the whole thing. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for you bringing your wisdom and your attention and your time.
Well, I'm grateful to be here and grateful to be on.
So to all of you bluebirds, thank you again for tuning into Deja Blue Podcast. It is such a joy and such an honor to interview such brilliant minds from all over the world doing such different things and recognizing that when we listen to other people's stories, we can get a lens onto the multidimensional, multifaceted human experience of what it means to be alive on the planet today in 2021. So I look forward to tuning in with you next week. And until then, may you feel loved and seen and blessed and all of the juice, and may you find all of the magic in the mundane. Bless. Until next time.